Thanks for joining me. I'm Mark Keenan. Let me talk about some of my goals for today and make sure I'm on track for you guys. When I started thinking about this session, I wanted to make it interesting. I wanted to try to avoid making it a commercial for what we do. I wanted to try and avoid just buzzwords and buzz talk and that kind of stuff, and really get into details. So I'm going to tell you from the get-go, those first two, there's a little bit of a conflict because when it comes to being interesting in a commercial, what I really know about is what we do. So a lot of what you'll see is what we do, but it could be other people and it'll give you ideas. But I'll try to frame it, in particular what I'm going to try and frame it for today is for what's a really big interest here at this show, which is about data, how you manage data, how it relates to, in general, your PIM systems or your MDM systems, depending on who you listen to in the morning. We get started. So Mark Keenan, I'm with Technicon. My background is I used to run a group at Intel for business development. We do web-based product information management. At this conference, we're working with Acuity, Cooper, and Lutron, and there are a few others that are yet to be announced, but will be shortly. In general, our customers tend to be major firms in a variety of industries. Certainly lighting and controls, we have a lot of customers there. But industrial parts, contract furniture, architectural and building products. What all these companies share in common is they're selling complex products. And generally a lot of them have needs in the architectural space. So let me frame it a little bit. Competing on the web is a huge topic, right? I wanted, if I tried to cover everything, Facebook, Twitter, I don't even know that much about it. I'm not sure how much I would tell you. Certainly when it comes to SEO and optimizing for Google and those kind of things, we're pretty confident internally. But really what I wanted to focus on is one aspect of this, which is your website. So, and in particular, not just the website, but the product sales systems that are out on the web. So it's not the marketing from the sense of draw traffic to your website. It's how do you close the order when somebody comes in. I wanted to focus on that aspect of it. They're interrelated because, obviously the data you put into your online catalogs, if it's an online marketing catalog, you do want that searchable, you do want it to be tagged correctly. Those are things that we focus on, but we won't talk about it here per se. And this is just really briefly to frame it, what we see, and you guys can tell me if you see it differently. I'm going to try and avoid the buzz. This spoil's a year old, but I don't know about you guys, but if you'd have told me 6 years ago there was so much frenzy around new devices, new internet stuff, and new deployment, I wouldn't have believed it, right? That was like 12 years ago when we were in the middle of the internet boom. It seems like there's almost as much frenzy in terms of adoption without maybe the financial investment, but at least from where I sit, everybody's picking up new Android devices, iPads. It's just an explosion in terms of people's expectations of what they will get through those devices. I don't know what you guys are hearing, but my sense when I talk to folks is in these industries, particularly that go to contractors and architects, where the sales are to those, ultimately maybe to those channels. It feels like the iPad is a real phenomenon where those guys are really picking it up and adopting it, and it has an impact on how they do business. That's how it hits me. And then, this is just sort of talking in general about expectations. Certainly nobody in our market, at least, has IBM's Watson system to sell electronics. That's not happening. But there is this general sophistication in the applications that users are using and demanding it's just breathtaking. You know, if you use an Android phone for maps, it's a very sophisticated little application, and people have that expectation. Some of these other topics I will show, they do intersect with what people are trying to do. So demand shaping, I'll show examples of that. Collaboration's impacting this, and certainly, you know, everywhere I go, I don't know if it's what you guys hear, but almost every manufacturer I deal with asks me about BIM. How do we address BIM? And BIM seems to be in the water that people are trying to address, and it's related to your online presence. Let's talk about what we're going to show, some of the trends we see in the electrical industry. So we see more sophisticated guided sales applications. I'll talk to that, but these things have elements of sizing. They have elements of not just ordering a SKU, but actually configuring or assembling a product. And certainly demand shaping in all kinds of ways is getting to be a more important trend. I'll show you examples of that. System design. Most of our, not all, but I would say 60–70% of our installations are for system design. I'll show examples for that and what that is, what we mean by it. On-demand documentation. So most of our systems would typically generate 70 to 200 page documents that are submittal packages. And that's, you know, even if it's a small document, all our systems have on-demand spec sheets or cut sheets that are generated. It's what we see. Maybe it's because what we do, but that's what we see happen. And then lastly, there's a visual aspect that the customers are beginning to expect, and I'll show you that. 99% of what I'll show you are our systems. There's one system that's not. Yesterday I was listening to Bob Gaylord speak, and he was talking about the hierarchies and taxonomies. And I don't know if you guys recall it, but when he went through, the example he showed was for this kind of system. It was for filtering. So in other words, you could envision you're on a gray bar website, you're going to filter for a product, and you know you're in a certain category of product, and you filter in it. That's standard, right? That's everybody has it. You have to have it to be in the industry, and that's a lot of what we're here about. This is an example from Google. You know, where you search for something and then you get filters over on the left. You could find it in any one of our systems. Sort of standard baseline operating procedure. Once you get beyond that, then you start moving into other realms and techniques to sell things on the web. I'm primarily trying to choose examples from companies that are here at Ideas. This is not, but it is electrical, and certainly we have these kinds of systems. This is related to filtering. It's sort of the reverse where you're parametric search, where you're searching based on certain characteristics. The interesting thing about this is you never give no. So even though there's no product that meets the criteria, there are two products that come close. So whether it's in filtering that previous foil or in a parametric search case like this, you would always want to have a backup system for offering options. So that should be part of your filtering strategy, and certainly should be part of parametric search if you have it. This is electrical. It's for Sensata. They're a spinoff of TI. This is pretty common. This is configuration. Most of you have seen it. You know, this is acuity. Default values are set. I think the biggest thing here, and this is pretty important in a variety of product segments, you know, it's standard to have visual elements. So, you know, a contractor probably will know if male and female, but there are lots of elements in a product where they may not know how it goes together. This is a SKU. This is generating a SKU. So it's you can see it in the top. The smart part number is beginning to be formed. This is an example of demand shaping. This is also acuity. It also is an example of sort of gamification where, you know, all things being equal, these are the things we'd rather you choose. It's in stock, we make more money. Pick it in green. Green's fun. you know. This is outside. It's very common. This is the world's largest pneumatics manufacturer. It's a big system. It has about 350 to 400,000 users. The interesting thing is it's not just related products. These products are specific to the configured value. So the notion is, you know, you've got a certain gauge wire. There's only a certain set of products that would go with that gauge of wire. So it's a very granular set of related products. These systems get deployed in online design centers. I'll show you a variety of those. And this is where we move into another area where it's typically these online design centers are targeted at maybe a contractor, but usually an agent or dealer. And they typically are doing system specifications for usually either a rebuild or a new building. Acuity controls, it's showing two elements. This is a system over on the right. You can see that the objects in the scene can be assembled. That's a panel being assembled. You can see the connections between the products, what type of connection, whether it's wireless or not wireless, is being assembled. Yeah.
Mark, do you see a lot of requests to have distributors be able to access configurators for manufacturers?
You know, I don't think they come to us. You know, my sense is it's being demanded from the demand we get to deploy systems for dealers. A lot of these, not to my knowledge, not this system, and I don't know all the individual systems. That I was going to answer differently.
Yeah, this one doesn't go to distributors.
No, well, the agents use it, right?
The agents use it, yes.
Yeah. The thing I was going to say, the Cooper system I'll show you in a second, they allow agents or dealers to personalize it by uploading logos and those kind of things. We also have other people who allow them to personalize the wrappers around it so it can be deployed.
One thing we'd like to be able to do is to be able to round trip. So if we go out and have a user tour, configure to select to be able to bring that back into our cart.
And that a lot of these are deployed in iframes, so they're designed, and they go against style sheets. So the systems are designed to sort of be a chameleon and be picked up by somebody and wrapped up.
What if you have customers requesting configuration guides, not just within a vendor, like within Uber, within Acuity, but
Multiple
across, right? Because they're providing a solution.
So now we do those kind of systems. And I'll show you the back. I mean, there's nothing to prevent you from doing it. We do those kind of solutions. The issue you get into, and we'll talk about it, the reason I'm talking about this stuff and showing it is there's a data implication, right? So it's how to deploy that in a way that is something you want to invest in from a data perspective, right? If you don't have, you know, to do it where you don't have an enormous amount of intelligence about it, that's very doable. I mean, certainly, for example, I'll give you an example. It doesn't show up here, but I'll take an example. This looks like a keypad to me. I don't know. It's pretty trivial to say keypad can only connect to this type of device. That's a trivial relationship to set up. It gets more complex if you want to say, you know, we can only have 5 keypads on this type. It's another level of complexity. And you have to analyze it and figure out what matches your level of appetite to invest in the data you're manufacturing. Acuity again, this is showing sizing. This is for, this is testing this assembly against wind loads for different regions of the country. We do sizing. So the notion is you run simple electrical, or in this case physical calculations for a selection. Very common. I can show you lots of examples of it. Layout, we were looking at that, but this just shows a reflected ceiling plan coming in. This is web-based. So, you know, you don't need a CAD system, don't need any of that. Somebody logs in, loads your reflected ceiling plan, and then does a system design. This is just showing that the objects in the scene are smart. This is sensor coverage, so it shows you how much is being covered. It shows the cutoff of the sensors because they see the rooms in the scene. It could be wireless coverage. How far can my wireless connect to another device? This is showing a little bit different. This is assembly for a different customer. But you can see objects are coming in. Objects know how they touch. This particular system has lots and lots of different kinds of connections. So certain things can connect to the rack. They can connect to the sub-assemblies, but things that connect to the sub-assemblies cannot connect to the rack. This just shows an up-close, detailed view. So behind all these scenes, the visualization, there's a CAD engine underneath. It's an inventor model. All these systems are designed to output BIM data. In this case, to be a long conversation, most of the products I see at Ideas are SKU, they're static products. So you really don't need a sophisticated CAD engine behind it. I'll talk about what I think you need, but in the case like this is both what we call parametric as well as assembled, if that's resonating. In other words, you're not looking at a CAD model, you're looking at about 5 or 6 CAD models, and they can be stretched. The most common target for BIM is Revit, and it's not designed to handle that. So normally the way you go is you use another engine, like in this case Inventor, which is an AutoCAD engine, and then convert to a Revit model. This just shows assembly. This is Cooper. It shows just doing a panel assembly, but it could be another classic case of assembly is when you put connectors onto wire and those kind of things. That's an assembly. You're doing multiple things. All assembly problems, really classic sort of kinds of things you put out there. The difference, it may seem technical, but the difference is you don't end up with a part number. You end up with a set of material. It's usually an indented bomb that is then ordered by whoever. This is showing system design validation, so it's not graphical, but you got a building has a bunch of stuff in it, and you're running a system check on everything that's going into that system. So yet another example of system design. This is another component of that, very common. All these things in here not only have connections, but in this case have load schedules, intent schedules. They get generated on the fly as you're laying these systems out. I was talking about documentation. We can pull up documentation from any of these systems. Yeah, I don't spec them for a living, but the documents I see typically have anywhere from 100 to 300 pages in them. Of that, 30 to 40% will be dynamically generated. And I'll show you some examples of some dynamically generated documents. This has a view, so it's pretty simple. I mean, this is the bill of material that's dynamic. These are drawings that are dynamically generated. This is another example. This is a one-line riser diagram. Different people call them different things. The interesting thing about this is there was no person laid this out. The same graphics engine that sees the bill of material generates these automatically, if that makes sense to you. So it sort of knows how the system thinks it's supposed to go together, and then it generates the wiring diagrams that go with it. You can use it for print. This is the QAD print catalog. Lots of other folks use it for print. This just shows that, I've showed our applications. This is an Acuity online catalog, which is Acuity's application, but it calls the same data. So from an environment standpoint, I may be off, but I see very much an environment where there's increasing sophistication of the tools that are offered, sort of like what people expect from Android. It feels like to me they're increasingly viewed as really important to the operations. We're putting a system in place now where they're bringing up a new line of business, and there are 3 legs of the tripod. One is the OEMs who build the product, so they got to go get that worked out. They got to get the channel, so they need 20 distributors or whatever across the country. And the third leg is they need a system, an online system, to sell the systems. From a data perspective, I think there are elements that drive the data sophistication. So when you saw all those systems, the products know they have behaviors built in them. So there's a different level of sophistication going into the data over just a SKU with attributes. And that's what we typically see here is a SKU with attributes. But these have different things going on with them. There's a visual representation of objects that has to be encompassed. And depending on what you're trying to do, there's a CAD output. Most of the products here, the CAD output's a file. I haven't analyzed it exactly, but it feels like 90% of the products we see in ideas are SKU-based. It's just handled by a file that's attached to it. But there's a wide range of products in the electrical industry where a file won't cut it. Certainly a file's not going to cut conduit that has dimensions associated with it. It even further exacerbates that problem, the silos of information, but it further drives organizations to have more of a PIM architecture to what you do. So technology. To do these kind of systems we're looking at, you really need what we believe is an object-oriented PIM. That's the only way you can blow out these millions of SKUs. It's the only way you can do the intelligence for the inner product or the intra-product configuration. You also need a different way to manage the attributes. Here where the idea is usually when I'm looking at the data structures, attributes are associated with the SKU. It's sort of an Excel spreadsheet view of the world. But if you're going to do a sizing element, for example, a classic one you guys are probably familiar with is, if you're going to run an electrical line from here to yonder, to know how much that thing's going to heat up, you need to know both the length as well as the gauge. That's sort of a classic electrical sizing problem. Another one might be pricing. To price a lot of things, you need to know the width and the length and those kind of elements. So it's more than one option that is driving the actual result. And that's the notion. You need to be able to model the data behavior, not just with a choice of an option, but it could be an interference pattern. Several different options point to the specific value that you're modeling. You have to have I believe you have to have a natural representation of the data. I think that's important no matter what you do. And by that I mean, it has to be something that product marketing people, it fits the way they think about the products. So it has to be expressed that way. To see these things on top of that data model, you need some applications to drive it. You need, if you're going to do the modeling and the layout, you need some integrated system to handle that kind of expression of the products. So I originally took this, the data challenge, the challenges around PIM. It was like 10 foils or whatever. I was trying to get it down to 1 or 2. I don't think there are any head turners. I mean, I've heard a lot of it talked about. So a lot of times, one of the challenges is, the data you have is designed for a point application. That could have been, an existing web catalog. It could have been a print catalog. So it doesn't fit well with other things. It may have internal references that you need to work out. It's not uncommon that, as you do more sophisticated systems, you expose gaps where, it's John knows, right? Maybe John and Henry have to argue about how the products really work before you get a resolution about how you really want to sell it. I think this is probably more important. Most of these, usually people, I think, do a really good handle on. So system requirements, how will the system operate? Most people plan that pretty well, and they do a good job of the requirements. Resource requirements, if you have to go touch the data. I think people, certainly everybody in this room is probably really sensitive to data, so I think usually you do a pretty good job of that. I personally feel it's really common that the last bullet, because if I was to say one practical thing I see, people underinvest in the data modeling and the specification. So in other words, we're going to go create Revit models, so we support them, but nobody has a standard for what a Revit model is. If you only have to generate 10 Revit models, it's not a problem because you go generate them again. You just have them redrawn. But if you're a manufacturer with 2,000 models that have to be drawn, and you draw them so they're inconsistent and don't follow a standard, then you just, you've wasted more than 2,000 hours to go generate those things. So it's important to have a standard you're operating against, a recipe, and I can show you examples of that. The other piece is related to that. It's you want to put effort into modeling how the data, just modeling the data and how it shows up in your PIM system. It's an important activity. Should be tested and thought through for the long haul before you launch a system. That's an opinion, but that's how I feel about it. Somebody talked about it yesterday. I hear a lot of people talking about it. I would reiterate it. Success for PIM requires a strategic approach. Usually, it's a sales system or something that initiates doing it. But to really get the value out of it, it has to be a long-term goal. So you hook more systems to it. You really do clean up those silos. I'd agree with that. That's the most successful approach I've seen. I do think it takes management support for a variety of reasons. One is to have that long-term perspective. The other is, the silos represent organizational structures within most of the companies I deal with. I can tell you, this didn't happen recently, but 6 or 7 years ago, we were comparing automated print output with what a human does for print output. And we had a page, right, for a catalog page, right? And we took it in to get approval. And I kid you not, somebody whips out the magnifying glass and says, well, the kerning on page, a computer won't do print as well as a human, right? So you have to have management sanity go into the ultimate decisions and the change, the people change that goes on with replacing systems, replacing activities people have always been comfortable with. The other thing I would tell you, is it takes resources, and it's always easier to find time to handle the problem you have with data today than it is to go find the time to correct the problems with the data for the long haul. It's just easier to fix a small problem today and get around it. So if you're going to move past it, it needs, seems like it needs management support. That is it for what I prepared. Any questions or any comments? Yeah.
Is the slide set available?
Sure, yeah. Just if a business card or whatever, I'll get it out to you right away. I didn't get my little...
Nope, you have plenty of time left.
The balls to throw out to incentivize people to ask me a few questions.
I think they're all gone.
Yeah.
So you see more and more of the suppliers on this channel, engaging in with somebody to put these configuration tools on, or things like that on their sites for use by distributors or contractors or engineers.
This year, we've seen an explosion of interest. So manufacturers putting in systems, it feels like it's something's in the water. So there's interest in putting it in. There's been discussions around a number of people have had discussions about putting skins on it for large channels, but yet nobody's pulled the trigger. I think two factors. There's a cost associated with it. It's not big, but there is a cost. And I think it's the case where it's also the case that if you do it for five people, you know, the cost is X, and if you do it for one person, the cost is 0.85 X. And so it's, if you can get a few people together to do it, it just lowers the incremental cost. But the incremental cost is, you know, these things are designed for iframes, they're designed for style sheets, so you know, you just switch those elements.
Mark,
Yeah.
we're a manufacturer, we play in the utility space, and we're putting in a tool like this
Yeah.
For our make-to-order type of product. And we see it not only as a sales tool, but also you drive all that efficiency inside. You don't have to go and create the bill of materials,
Right.
all of that. So it's kind of facing both ways. But just to kind of follow up on that question, there is opportunity out there, at least in some space.
And you talked about one. I took it out. I mean, there was some information that talks to why people do it, why people put these systems in. If you want to, just remind me, and I can send out here are the benefits we've heard from people. But a lot of it is internal efficiencies. You know, it's not. I was focusing on it from a marketing standpoint. You know, somebody comes in and you close the order, and they prefer to deal with you because it's fun and it's they don't need as much training. Training gets to be a big issue where you don't. You just don't have time to train people and get them up to speed, your sales force. But there are also big internal efficiencies from order, you know, removing order errors from the system. You know, because these things have a lot, you know, it's not uncommon you'll have 700 items in a bill of material, right? If you get one number off, you've got a bad order going in. And there's also a lot of costs just for the effort to do it. Like, you know, when we talk about these, a lot of these are generating submittal packages, so it could be a 100 to 200 page document. I'm told that in the life cycle of a project, you know, you'll redo those packages 5 or 6 times. You know, somebody will change something, they'll want a low-cost version and their ideal version. Generating those packages and changing them, you know, it can take 2 or 3 days versus you know, a few hours initially, and then, you know, just minutes to tweak it if you're just tweaking it. So that's it ends up being a lot of people time, you know. I think one of the reasons people, I don't know in your case, but if people are going through a dealer or agent channel, you know, one of the reasons to put the tool in is you just get mind share because you're just the easier person to do business with.
Exactly, and we play in, to some extent, in the civil contractor space as well. So some of our product is more geared for that, and that has a much wider customer base in terms of the number of unique customers and architects that are coming in.
Right.
So to your point, getting that out there, you do get a first look at what you're thinking about.
How far are you guys in your deployment?
We've initially we looked at the tool as more of a internal use first, and that's kind of where we're using it at the moment. It just reduces a lot of the engineering time that goes into it, document creation and drawing creation time. So we're already seeing some of the benefits of that. The next step is to kind of get it to a point where, in some cases, it's simplified. The model is simplified so that put it out there, people are kind of guided to the to an answer that you want them to get to.
Right. Well, I didn't show good examples, but it would be common to put on these more of a true guided sales. I don't know what your system looks like, but a true guided sales layer on top, and by that I mean it's typically sort of a question and answer. So it would be common on these to put, for the unsophisticated user, tell me how many rooms you have, right? Tell me how many loads you want to control, and sort of back them into the solution that way. And I didn't show that because, you know, as a vendor, that's so much easier to do than the hard underlying stuff. But that would be, I didn't know if that's what you guys are doing, but that's a common. That's a common interface.
That's kind of what we're, basically what we have right now is kind of all of the options that are that constrain the manufacturing, right? But there's typically a subset of that we actually want to take to the market and sell, and a smaller subset that we actually really like selling.
Right.
So we just need to build those different rule sets in there to get it to the next level where we put a customer face.
One comment I'd make in this room, I didn't show it at all. So there's a modeling, a PIM behind the system, all the systems we looked at. The talk was competing on the web, so I focused on front end stuff. But there's a very sophisticated back end for non-technical folks to manage the data. And it's interesting. One of the I didn't even put it on here, but usually when people are putting systems in, I don't know if it was the case in y'all's case, but usually the effort's led by generally somebody out of marketing and somebody out of IT. A lot of times, not always, a lot of times they don't look at the modeling environment first. So you could build some of these systems and do what we call hard code it, right? You write a program for every product and put it in place, which is wrong. But if you were doing a system, if I were in your shoes, and you guys, I say you're probably sensitive to it because it's the data show, and people here are very sensitive to PIMs and master data management systems. But we would always coach you, spend a lot of time and look at the modeling environment. That ends up being, that ends up making these long-term usable systems. Because, the issue is, you introduce a new product or maybe you change how a product works. You want to do that instantly and have it available instantly. You don't want to go back to a developer to write code about how this product works or that doesn't. So I didn't focus it here, but in retrospect, it would be one of the other things to sort of benchmark when you put the system in place.
Yeah, I think just another comment on that. I think that's a good point. Just like having clean data is the baseline, whether it be EDI or a transaction like that. Having a clean model and the rule set behind there is fundamental.
It's critical.
And we actually drove the sponsor of the project that was coming out of engineering simply because they were spending so much time redoing these drawings and all of that kind of stuff that the sponsor of the project was actually in engineering. What we found there was even some of our manufacturing calculations had inefficiencies built into them. So just figuring all of that out and going through that and cleaning up that model, we were able to save on the production side of things that actually paid for all of this. The project that we were doing.
When I was showing the one sizing algorithm on that used to be done by engineering, so that was one of the big reasons to put it in was to avoid having avoiding having to do marketing work to size how polls sit and went. And before it went in, I believe it was about 6 hours for an engineer to do it. And the issue was there was a 3 or 4 day turnaround for an engineer to do it. So, that doesn't play well with architects or other people when they're trying to put in a system. Let me turn around on. I have a question for are you guys seeing other kinds of product marketing systems, other trends or anything else that you see as important in the marketplace? Did most of this stuff seem normal? Did it seem science fiction? Did it? Anybody seeing any other trends or any other kind of stuff? Do you see distribution trying to deploy some of these types of systems? Yeah.
I think for us, I don't know if the challenge is being able to link, take our customers and link out an iframe or whatever to the manufacturer's site. And if everything they want to do is manufacturer would be great, but I think more and more of the customer demand will be to provide a full opportunity to configure a solution across manufacturers.
Right.
So that one, one of the the fundamentals for the cost for doing it. If the data coming in is really clean on those attributes, and if it's really following standards, like low power port, is low power port, and we get it from 5 manufacturers. That greatly will greatly reduce the effort for deploying a multi-manufacturer related system.
Or if it mounts on a pipe or a box or whatever, and that sizing information is consistent
That's right.
across, or the wire gauge or range of gauges that you need to run that device.
That's right. Yeah. The consistency not only of the data, but basically the attribute tags,
Right.
the consistency of those. Because if it's consistent, then creating assembly models for it is overlaying on that consistent information. So you model how these things go together, and then they're intelligent and they know how to go together. A panel doesn't know. All it knows is this type of thing can go in it and can't consume more than this type of resources, right? And resources is just an attribute of your data. Any other kinds of anything else I can answer? Any other questions? Or everybody's quiet. It's the end of the session. I'm going to take this up. It's the end of the conference. Let's get back home. If anybody would like the presentation, like other material, like the ROI or why people do it, just hand me your business card and I'll try and get it to you right away. Thanks for coming. Thanks for attending. I hope it was okay.